All right. Hey, welcome to today's webinar, everybody. I'm just going to give us a couple minutes for people to get logged on, and I see numbers growing up. So we are expecting a pretty big crowd today. So I'm just going to, if you guys can hang with me for a minute. We are going to be covering herb gardens today with Peg, which is always a fun topic. I love Peg's herb garden with the photos of it. I know you create some great herbs. Okay, good. I see the numbers going up now. So just a few notes for those of you who are regulars. As always, just bear with me. For those of you who are new, welcome. We are glad to have you here for our Zoom webinars. We are not able to see you or speak to you during this class. So if you have questions, you're going to hit the Q&A box on your Zoom menu. You'll type those questions in. I'll be taking them and giving them to Peg when she's ready to take questions. Just going to say a quick note, because we have been getting more people from out of state. This is geared towards Virginia, but we are happy to have people attending these classes from anywhere. We've had out of country, out of state, across the country, all kinds of people. So that's been an exciting development. I think that about covers it on my end. We are recording today, and we will follow up after the class with a link to the recording as well as a coupon, just so that everybody is aware. And finally, really, Peg, you don't need any introduction, I know. But for those of you who have not yet seen Peg teach a class or haven't been to the Fair Oaks location, Peg works primarily in our annuals department at the Fair Oaks store. She has been teaching classes with us for years. She was on our gardening advisor television program when we had that, and makes some of the most beautiful containers and has a beautiful garden. So Peg, I'm looking forward to hearing from you today. Thank you.
Well, and thank you. And good afternoon. Good, happy spring. It's here. It's all around us now. Before we actually begin this topic for the day, I really want to share something with you that I have been doing for years, and I know that some of you are doing it now, but we are at the end of March. We do not ever know. We cannot predict the weather. We have a general idea of what's coming up, but that can change. I have, and I'm trying to promote the use of, this is called Frost Blanket, and air goes through, water goes through, the sunlight goes through, and so you can actually use this product and leave it on as long as you feel that it's necessary to do that, as long as you use it properly. It's a very thin fabric, and it can be used to cover containers. I have covered some of my pots that need a little assistance through the mid-30s on down. And I've covered them and wrapped a string around it, so, and left it loose, okay? I've used it out into the garden, many purposes. So I can, and it's reusable. I have used mine over and over and over again. If you're putting it down in the garden or in some places, invaluable that I always have on hand are these sod pins, are what we call them. They're heavy duty hairpin, if you want to call it that, which can staple this down. So I want to tell you to investigate more perhaps about what we call frost cloth or frost blanket. And it is a wonderful thing to have on hand at this time of the year, because we don't know what the weather's going to do. I do see a mid-30s night temperature, maybe towards the weekend. And so you need to watch for those things, because some of this stuff actually needs to come inside. We're looking at Easter weekend right now. And so we have things like begonias and Easter lilies and geraniums, which have been grown in the hothouse and will not tolerate 35 degrees, okay? So they're fortunately mobile. You can enjoy them and bring them inside, because it's like buying a bouquet, only it's going to last for a long time. Things that you don't have to worry about as far as the cold is concerned, or things like the tulips that are grown outside and grown cold. Okay, they'll be fine. And the pansies and violas that are outside, they're accustomed to being outside and they're fine. Okay. Most of our herbs, which we will be talking about today, have been grown cold and should be fine. I will mention a couple of exceptions that you need to watch for that. But let's begin with the topic of the day now, after we've had this watch the weather thing. Okay, so let's bring up the first. Okay, so I want to welcome you to my garden. Some of you who have watched some of this presentation before may see some of the same pictures, but that's all right. I don't mind looking at them, so I hope that you won't either. In the next picture are actually herbs that I bring into the kitchen. So here is the value of those herbs. I grew up where everything was fried. No longer do I do that. I have to have fried chicken once or twice a year, but herbs replaced the flavoring and the whatever that I grew up with. And I bring in and I particularly will focus on those things that I use most, which are the various thymes, the various basils, rosemary, parsley, chives, all of these wonderful things. And I'm going to mix in some of the flowers, either as pollinators or as those like the nasturtium and the marigold, which can be used as beautiful garnish and can actually be eaten. I do love the unique flavor of the nasturtium. I'm not terribly fond of the flavor of the marigold, but they're beautiful garnish. Okay, we'll look at the next one. All right, there's also a lot of discussion about using every square inch of your property. And I think that's not a bad idea because we're all paying pretty severe taxes on it. So we need to take advantage of that and be sure that it's all used properly according to the needs of the family. One of the things that people talk about is using the front garden more for growing the vegetables and the herbs and etc. And so one year I actually grew all of this in containers, large containers, mind you, in the end of my driveway, because that's where I had sunshine. I have a large property, but I don't have a large amount of full sun. And this was full sun. So I want to say that just growing tomatoes in cages and cucumbers in cages and some of those things that might be fine when they're in their prime, but they're not so good looking after that. But it can be done attractively, okay? And this was actually quite attractive for a long period of time. Now, at one point in the game, because unfortunately, yeah, that's how I feel about it anyway, I have a lot of deer. And so I did have to put some deer fencing around the tomatoes, but most of the other things were fine. They don't like the lavender, they don't like the zinnias, they don't like some of the other, they won't eat the basil. And so I didn't have to worry about those things. But I just wanted you to know that there is an attractive way to mix. And I will be showing you different mixes of this. But in the next picture is another view of that particular area. So you see, there were enough flowers. Now, this was a large grouping of containers, but it can be done in a small space It can be done in a townhouse garden, a front garden, wherever you want to put it, because it's going to be attractive. It had a lot of salvia, a lot of basil. It had the nasturtiums. You can even see a sunflower later peeking its way up. And believe it or not, those tomatoes really did quite well. And if you do decide to do that sort of thing in your front garden, then make it more pleasant, and be sure that at the end of the season that you take down those tomato cages and that you clean up any area. I don't belong to an HOA, so they can't really tell me what to do. But fortunately, I'm considerate enough of all my neighbors to want it to be attractive for their benefit also, okay? So you can do it attractively. And let's go to the next one, Danny. I do have one large area, which is some distance from the house, that is a diversified mix of things. It's where I grow my vegetables. It's where I grow a lot of herbs. You can see coming out of that strawberry jar that there's calendula, which are also edible. And there's nasturtium. There's a rosemary coming out of the top of that. There's a long row of parsley, which I use a lot of parsley. Parsley is a biennial. That means the first year you get all of these beautiful leaves that you can use in your cooking or in your salads. But in that second year, it comes up and you can use it for a little while, but then it's going to run to seed and it's going to die. And sometimes, depending upon how you mulch, it will reseed itself a bit, okay? You can see a line of marigolds because there are a lot of things that don't like marigolds and they're somewhat of a repellent. I can tell you one thing that does like marigolds, and that's slugs. It's really difficult when you put them in the ground particularly, but I'm very nostalgic. I love the use of pine needles. Underneath it is in the pathways, I put down newspaper, and then I put down some Virginia Finds mulch. And on top of that, I have put some pine needles. And I do find that the slugs are not terribly fond of that rough texture of the pine needles. So that helps a lot. And because of this diversity, I have many pollinators visiting, and it's very attractive. Now, think about this small part of that garden as your townhouse back garden or front garden. It's attractive. So you can have all of these things if you have the diversification. And the pollinators will thank you, and you will thank them for doing their job. And this is a little bit of a close-up that I plant densely. When you do that, you cut down considerably on the weeds, although I have weeded and mulched well, so I'm not going to have to worry very much about weeds in here. But I have onions growing out of the sides of the marigolds, and I have basil beside the little rabbit statue that you see. And yes, I don't want to overdo it and hope I have not, but I do enjoy some of the fun little statuary pieces, accent pieces in the garden. And I purposely put this little rabbit next to the onions because it's crying, okay? And in the very next picture, another way to diversify, regardless of the size of your garden. Now, I'm talking about things that need sunshine here. How do you define that sunshine? Obviously, afternoon sun is the strongest, but morning sun is fantastic also. And as long as you have 6 to 8 hours of direct sun, you can grow all these things. And now, as a border back in that back garden, or it could be anywhere, could be again in your townhouse. So in other words, this can be a small space, a large space, and it could be changeable. There's a fair number of annuals here because they're great pollinators. It's difficult to find a better pollinator than zinnias. I absolutely love it. And if you constantly harvest them to bring in the house, they're long lasting as a cut flower, and that will keep them blooming. And you can start with some plants that are already started to give you a jump start, and then add some seeds now and then in places where you'd like to have them, and you have them continuously in bloom until frost, okay? Now, bear this in mind where you're planting in the spring. Watch your temperatures, because we are going to have things and do today in the garden center that will not tolerate cold, really cold temperatures. When you get down into the 30s, even though it isn't frosting, some of these plants that just come out of the greenhouse don't want to be out in that kind of weather. So don't plant those things in the ground yet, because the ground temperature is still cold. We think of, okay, it's 45 degrees outside now, but the ground temperature isn't as warm as the air temperature. When you're growing in containers, that soil is warmer than the ground temperature. So think about those things when you're thinking of putting stuff into the ground. We have people now requesting tomatoes because we've had some warm days, requesting Vinca annual, and those two thick caladiums. Those things will not tolerate cold, wet soil, okay? So just think about the needs of those plants, and either do the containers that you can cover or that you can bring in, or hold off for just a little bit on some of the most tender of those things. A lot of things will tolerate cold. For instance, geraniums love it cool, not cold, but they love it cool. Of course, the violas and the pansies are fine. Snapdragons love it cool. They perform best when it's cool. So those are the things that you can do, as long as you, again, watch the night temperatures, okay? Let's do the next one, Danny. I use herbs in so many different ways. I love to use herbs as ground cover, and it certainly keeps out a lot of weeds. This one is one of the creeping thymes. I don't think it's the mother of thyme, but there's a number of different thymes that are fantastic. And you can see that there's nasturtium in this. And there's also a pot of rosemary in that. Danny, it will come back to me for just a minute. Let's take a break and talk about some of these different plants. Let's talk about some of the herbs that I may not go into carefully in some of these pictures, and I'll probably be going through some of these pictures pretty fast because I've got a lot of them. I always enjoy the violas, and they're a complement to everything else. And they, by the way, can be used as garnish also in your veggies and whatever. I absolutely love using dill. I'm particularly fond of using dill when I'm cooking salmon. This plant loves to be grown cool. It's not as happy in 95-degree weather. And that's when you can grow things like this, though, in part shade. In for instance, full morning sun, but not on a deck that gets blazing hot sun all day long. This will not tolerate freezing weather right now. If it's 35 degrees, it's cold for this plant right now. but I'm going to plant it in one of my containers and be prepared to cover it if it gets that cold, okay? Dill, absolutely fantastic. Annual, of course, and it's good to know that you're going to use this up and then you're going to have another one growing in the wings because you want that continuity of being able to use them. Another one that's sort of unusual, I love to plant celery. I use a lot of celery in my cooking. And you can use the leaves. It grows up into nice stems. But if you've never done this in your garden, you really should give it a try. It's good in the ground or it's good in containers. And in a container that's a good at least 18 inches, you could grow 4 or 5 of these and harvest constantly some of the leaves because they're very tasty in salads, etc. And I, of course, always have to have parsley growing. And I love both. And they have slightly different flavors. The large leaf one is a little stronger than the curly leafed one, but the curly leafed one is beautiful for garnish or cutting up. And people don't realize that this is a very healthy vegetable for you. Becomes a vegetable when you eat it, I guess. Instead of just leaving that garnish on the plate, munch down on it. It's very good, okay? So I've got to have some parsley. This particular little container has 3 parsley in it. When you put this into a container or into the ground, you want to loosen those outside roots. And actually here again, in at least an 18-inch wide container, you could simply plant that once you've loosened those roots. You could plant all 3 in that container and harvest it all through the summer. When I spoke of different varieties of thyme, and I use thyme in a lot of my cooking, I love the thyme that we so often plant to use in cooking is the English thyme. And it grows a little taller than most of them. So that is a staple, but I think I like even more this lemon thyme, and it's called, with this green, and there's the variegated. But this is absolutely beautiful when it's grown either as a ground cover or grown in a container. And that slight, oh, it's so nice. You can't smell it, but I can. That slight lemony flavor is so good. Here again, that might be pretty good with the dill on that salmon that I enjoy. Okay. Now, oregano is another one that I use a lot of. And there's a little variegated guy. It's not quite as strong, or sometimes variegation isn't quite as strong a grower as the green versions, but it grows well and it's quite tasty and really beautiful. Can spill out over the edge. Okay, so come back to me for a minute. Oh, we're already at it. Thank you. Let's talk for a minute about the growing of this. Okay, we'll take a little break, and Danny help me watch the timing because I've got a fair amount to run through. Okay, a decent sized container. Small containers dry out very quickly, and especially if you've got them in a hot condition on a deck or an area that really gets the blazing hot sun. So the size of your container is important. I always put a piece of landscape fabric over hose. They have to have hose. They have to have good drainage. Herbs do not like wet feet, okay? So I put a piece of that landscape fabric, and I know here at the Fair Oaks location, we cut those long rolls into 1-yard pieces so that it's affordable for those of you who want to do some containers but don't want to buy a full roll of that. So in goes this. And then good potting soil. Here at Merrifield, we carry really good potting soils. There is such a thing as finding a cheap variety out there, but cheap doesn't always work, okay? I have fallen in love with, at the moment, a couple of products here. One is Fox Farm. Now, this may be the most expensive potting soil that we have. But whoa, is it worth it? It has C products, okay, byproducts, okay, being reused. And then it has earthworm castings. So it's that guana. It has a lot of good stuff in it. And herbs don't want to be overly fertilized, but I use this. Fox Farm also puts out one called Happy Frog, which is very similar, but pretty much this contains mycorrhiza, which is good from the soil. Hopefully you've already got some in your own garden naturally, but this doesn't have exactly the same products that the other one does. But I think it's probably just about as good. But I really reach for the Fox Farm. And then we have other products that are good also. But you know, we can't always use every one of them. But I have used all the Espoma products are good. And this has some very strong things in it also. It's got alfalfa meal, kelp meal, feather meal, earthworm castings. And it's a very good potting mix also. Now, Merrifield, we have our own, okay? But that one does not have all these additives. It's not quite as expensive as some of these. So if you want to be careful, you can use half and half. That's no problem, okay? Now, I just said to you that, by the way, I would then fill this 2/3 full. But be sure you wet it down really, really well. And when you put these plants in, you could, in this size container, if you chose to do so, you could put the parsley in one area, and then maybe there's this beautiful thyme to creep all around the other side. And when the parsley is finished, you'll have all the thyme growing through it. Now, if you don't do that, you could certainly do the thyme and a parsley and a dill, perhaps 4 different ones in this area, and probably grow that and enjoy it this year and next year. But after that, you would have to divide it. When you finish planting these, you want to hold that soil down a couple of inches from the rim. You do this so that the soil stays in the container when you're watering it. And what I like to do, because squirrels love to dig in fresh soil, I will frequently top off with a 1/2 inch of that really small gravel, either the Seminole chips 3/8 inches, or using the River Jacks, which is the 3/8 inch. That's tiny. Now, the other thing that you can do is use Virginia Fines mulch on the top of that, okay? But not filled ever to the tippy top of this, because then it's very difficult to water. And when you do water, because you're watering all of the time, you're washing those nutrients out. And even though it started with really good stuff, and it's going to hang on to a lot of the stuff that's in these really good mixes, that's not going to wash out as easily. You're going to have to watch your plantings. Where herbs are concerned, they don't require the kind of fertilizer that, for instance, a petunia would, or your other annuals would, which probably need to be fertilized at least every 2 weeks. These don't, okay? But I have not used this. Neptune puts out a fish liquid fertilizer, but I'm going to try this. I just was talking with David Yost about it yesterday, and James, and they said some people don't like the fragrance using it inside. I've got a lot of beautiful little things that I've started from seeds. So I'm going to try all this and hope that I don't mind the fragrance of it inside, but outside it's not going to be a problem, okay? So you can follow the directions with this liquid one and do it 2 or 3 times through the summer is all you're going to need for the herbs. You need much more than that. All right, when I'm using that potting soil, I keep a large bag of Plantone. This is an Espoma product also. It is all natural and all organic. So it's certified as organic. And you have to jump through a lot of hoops to get things certified, believe me. So I'll put a handful, 2 handfuls in the size of that container that I was showing you, which is at least 18 inches across. In addition to all of this, and that's all the fertilizer these are going to need for quite a while. You always want to watch your plants and see what they're doing, and that's going to talk to you and tell you what you need as far as fertilization is concerned. Okay, Danny, let's go back to a few pictures now. I'm going to go through some of these things quickly, and they're more for your ideas and thinking than anything else. So let's go to the next one. This is that garden now. These are all taken at different times, okay? And a garden is never the same, okay? I'm always trialing things anyway, but using it differently. At the moment, this is really early spring, and you can see in the front that combination of the various times and how beautiful that is as a ground cover. But it's very easy to go out and harvest those and keep it nice and compact. And I do use it a lot, so it is hard. And as I'm looking at it on my right side is a lovely, the larger leaf that you see is sage. And likewise, the more you harvest these things, the more compact they are. And there's several rosemary, which have wintered well in this area, okay? And coming on in that strawberry pot, I think that year I did grow a good number of strawberries, and I still have a few plants spilling out of some of that right now. And oh my, I know last year the little great-granddaughters certainly enjoyed harvesting those strawberries. So even though you don't have a lot of them, if you've got small children, they do enjoy that. In the center of this, at the moment, in this picture, there are a lot of the early things. There are the lettuce that's there and takes the cool weather, and a lot of the broccoli and the cabbages. And when some of those are finished, I think in the background you can barely see that there are some tomatoes coming on, and I do use the large tomato cages there. Coming back to me again quickly, Danny. When I'm out there harvesting things in this garden, I take with me a pair of Joyce Chin scissors. I've used these for many, many years now, and I've never found anything that replaces them. They are wonderful for deadheading, and they're great for shearing back things like that thyme to bring inside, or snipping the rosemary. They are fantastic, produced by a lady for use in the kitchen. And so I always have a pair in the kitchen and a pair in the garden shed and probably a pair in my purse. Wonderful things. You can't go wrong with these Joyce Chin scissors. Now, they make one that has a longer shank. I don't like it. I like this small one that's really easy to deal with, okay? When you're also, there's another thing I'd like to recommend while we're talking about tools. Tools are so important for me, and I don't really like anybody to bother my tools particularly. I like to take good care of my tools. And I do a lot of containers, not just herbs, but I love these scoops. They're just fantastic for scooping those soils and moving it around. Just absolutely love that. Alrighty, let's go back to some diversity here. And now we're all realizing how very important it is to take care of our environment, to encourage those pollinators, to give them a pathway, at least from one garden to another, because we've lost a lot with all of the wonderful subdivisions that we have. So diversity is where it's at. This is attractive. It will be attractive in all seasons. Granted, it's going to look like winter because a lot of these things die back to the ground. And I love to have things that come and go. When you're talking about perennials, you're not talking about a plant that's going to bloom all summer long, or at least it's rare that it does. And here there's a bit of yarrow behind the chair. There's yarrow growing, and I love that, and the pollinators love that, and I love to cut it because it dries beautifully. I again have a lot of the marigolds because they repel things, and just in the spring and blooming, usually along with the alliums, are those spiky foxglove in the background. And of course, there's a beautiful rose blooming in there also. Running through these quickly because I've only got a few minutes now, and I do want to be able to take a few questions. Again, sorrel. A lot of people really enjoy the sorrel. You can saute it, you can use it in vegetables, and that's the spiky little evergreen that you see just outside the nasturtiums, okay? I have chives, you can see, I think that may be onions. It may be some of those Egyptian onions that form the little baby onions at the tippy top. And a lot of diversity going on there, okay? Next one, honey. All right. Now, that garden is some distance from my house. And it's fantastic if you can walk through pretty quickly out your kitchen door and harvest a few herbs at the last minute and run back in the kitchen. And so I lost a huge tree in this area, a huge oak tree in this area. And that Japanese maple is in a huge pot that's sitting on top of that stump. And I really do enjoy it. It's thriving there. And all around that are large pots. They're mostly clay, and clay is good. Not doesn't have to be clay, okay? But clay is good for herbs because herbs like to be on the dry side, and clay breathes really well, okay? So there are all the herbs in there that I use regularly in my cooking. Now, that particular area there is 2 to 3 years old, and I have not changed the soil in it. I have added the organic fertilizers to the top each season, but I haven't taken them out and changed the soil. Okay, so last Sunday, and Leo helped me, we put a little tarp on the grass, took out each container, took out most of the soil except what was around the plant itself, and actually removed some of that with a heavy-duty knife, cut it in half, put half back in with fresh Fox Farm soil and a little bit of the plantain. And it's going to grow really quickly with that, and soon it'll be looking like this all over again. I think I have a duplication, a little closer view of this, and there's a lot going on here. There's sage, there's rosemary, thyme, oregano, basil, all those things that I use a lot of, okay? You can see there's a lot of basil here. Now, when basil comes into bloom, I know I try to keep some of it pinched back, but I let a lot of it go because, wow, is it a pollinator. Okay, we're going to run through these really fast. Golden thyme. No, that's golden oregano. and it's a wonderful thing to cook with. And in the next one, these cutesy little signs when you send somebody out to harvest something, then they get the right thing, okay? Then one year I had a neighbor who not front, oh, this is a different one, okay? Chives, yes. And you know, you could cut those all the way back, and within 2 weeks, they're growing back again. They really respond very, very quickly. Now, that particular year, I grew some little cherry tomatoes. You can expect an abundance of fruit from a cherry tomato. It's wonderful. And I love them in salads, and the little great-granddaughters love them too. The following picture, I'm going to really go through these quickly, okay? A neighbor used a side yard for his vegetables in the back and his herbs in the front. And the next one is basil, just a lot of basil growing in a pot. And now we have some basils that are not so susceptible to powdery mildew. And then I have to always tell you what David Yost did in his earth box, okay? This is a self-watering thing, provided you replace the water periodically. And he grew a tomato plant in there and basil all around it. And in the next picture, you can see that he has a super amount of tomatoes. I've forgotten how many. Did he say 80 tomatoes that he grew in that season with that? He did complain because the squirrels got into it and really got some of those, but the solution to that is you just have to put some netting around it, you know. And actually in the next picture were tomatoes that we grew at the garden center in containers. The following picture was one I was fascinated with. Yes, it's showing a fair amount of shade here, but it does during the day get a cumulative amount of probably 6 hours of sun. But they do tolerate some shade, which is lucky. And this is just outside this lady's back door. The next picture is plant and allow them to help you plant the young people. They're planting their strawberries. And that particular year, they really harvested a lot of strawberries. In the following picture, I just love to look at this. It was on a tour that we did with the Perennial Plant Association, and it had to be one of the most beautiful herb gardens I think I've ever seen. So these things can be exceptionally beautiful. Mine will never look like that, but it's nice to see it, okay? And of course, you always have to have a picture of Clara. And I have used this previously, but I would love to do a little follow-up. She's using one of my favorite tools, which is the little trowel thing. When not called a trowel, what do you call it? It's a scoop. Thank you. Couldn't get along without Danny. And she's adding the fertilizer, the Plantone, to this large pot. In that pot, she planted onion, the little bulbs, and she was very thrilled to do that. She learned the bottom and the top and the first one, put them all in correctly. And then when she finished, she says, now will we have some for dinner? No, Clara, it don't work quite like that. And so last week, after she had done this 2-3 weeks ago, I took her back into the garden again and said, okay, we're going to uncover these because I had put the frost cloth on top of it. And let's have a look. And they were 4 or 5 inches tall. And she was so excited. So she's now understanding the growth process. And it will be very exciting for her to do help with the harvest. So here again, be sure that you give those young people some fun things to do. I'm so thrilled that my oldest granddaughter and her sister, and there are a couple of others too, who have their own townhouses now. And I'm constantly working with them on those townhouses. So it's very exciting for me to see to see their progress. So let's come back to me, Danny. And what she had in that picture, because she wanted some gloves, and I didn't have any children's gloves for her at the time. She had on my foxgloves. We do have these downstairs. They're still in the basket. They're never easy to locate. I've been saying, please get these on the glove board, but they're still in the basket. They're the best glove I've ever had. I can feel everything with it. And so bless her little heart, as big as they were, she kept those little gloves on her hand, and they're fantastic. Now, someone asked me the other day in class about the wet. What I do is, I know from Costco, you can get a package of the little disposable gloves, and I like to put those over when I'm dealing with wet, because I don't like the feel of a wet glove, okay? But I do like to feel the things that I'm working with. And talking about feeling the things that I'm working with, because we've got all these plants streaming in here. You just have to know how to take care of them, that's all. But this is a new marigold. I'm very excited about that. I love the color. Now, that's not going to show up terribly well in the garden. So when I have something that's kind of dark like this, I like to blend it with some things that aren't as dark, okay? Just really, really exciting to me. Okay, there's a number of other things I'd love to talk about, but I really want to take some questions. So let's leave a little time for that. We have some questions, honey.
And I'm just going to go ahead and warn everybody. We've had so many come in already. I'm not sure we're going to be able to get to everybody's, but I'm going to try and combine them, and we'll try and hit multiple questions with each one. So
okay,
we'll get to as many as we can. And as always, if you do not get your question answered, hit reply on your confirmation emails. The reply comes to me and I'll follow up with you. So, I'll get David or Peg to follow up with you if needed. So we'll take care of that. But okay, so we've had a few questions come in given the time of year about what can be planted now and what needs to wait. In particular, people are interested in basil, which I know
basil is very, very susceptible to the cold. Yes. Basil is not something you particularly want to put in the ground right now. You can buy it and enjoy it inside, but it's not ready to go outside. We're talking about some things out there, and when people come in, hopefully we could answer these questions a little more, because it's a little confusing when you've got geraniums and you've got things that don't want below 40 degrees, okay? But you do have violas, and you've got pansies, and you've got a lot of things that will tolerate this. And by the way, petunias are pretty tolerant. They don't want to go out of a greenhouse and be frosted, okay? But they love the cool temperatures. And once you've acclimated a geranium and it's not in the 30-degree level, it will acclimate outside. But most of these things, but basil is top of the list for don't put it out too soon.
Yeah. Well, okay. I was talking to David yesterday, Peg, because we sent out some lists of herbs with your email of what was in the store. And he had said, basically, we have a really great selection of everything except basil. Do you feel that that's pretty accurate?
Well, that's yes, absolutely. And I walked the walk today, and we've got a lot of stuff out there.
Okay.
And most of it is very cold tolerant, okay, but not basil.
Okay. Okay. No. Okay. All right. Next question about containers. Can you talk about, I know you'd mentioned that the size of the container is very important. So can you say if there's like a minimum size? Would you plant multiple herbs in a container, or would you do one type per container? What's your recommendation?
Having one type eventually in that second year, or particularly, is a good thing, but it's not necessary. Now, when we divided these things, let's say this container, And I'm pretty sure that's about 18 inches, isn't it, Danny? Don't you think? But it's also deep. And
Yeah.
don't stuff things into the bottom. Put your potting soil into the bottom, because you'd be surprised how deep those roots go. Okay, we cut that in half. Now this is going to be growing and recouping. I don't mind going back into that vacant part and planting dill. And I could do a couple of the dill back there, because this is going to finish off before hot summer hits. And I might even replace that with another one. And so you can put multiple things in. And when you're just beginning in the first year, as I said, if you love the basil and you love the parsley and you love the oregano, you can put of these 4.5 inch, you can put 4 plants in there, but next year you're going to have to divide it. Or if you do the parsley next year's going to be finished. And you've got to judge that. Now, how small can you go? That depends upon your circumstances. Are you in the blazing hot sun? If you come down to a 12 inch, you're going to have a rough time keeping that watered. Most people do not want to go out and water twice a day. I don't. And so the size of container is dependent to some degree upon how often do you want to water that plant.
Okay.
And I don't want to water twice a day. You know, and with hanging baskets, regardless of what's in it, you have to be careful of your watering. And the 10-inch baskets are just full of roots, and they are going to need to be watered frequently, okay? You can trade those up into a larger basket, but when you do that, you always have to remember that's going to be heavier also. Okay, hopefully that answered that question.
Yeah, that's great. All right. So this next one, we've had a few questions about, and this is growing indoors. So let me know if you'd want me to refer to someone maybe at the greenhouse. But
Okay.
If someone has a bright room, this particular person has windows on 3 sides, is it possible for you to grow herbs from seed indoors without having to have grow lights or anything like that? Does it depend on the herb? Do you have any experience or recommendations?
You can certainly start things inside, particularly if there's really good light. I'm just thrilled right now with all of the things that I have growing in my dining room, kitchen, family room, all very open. And I use frequently a Vermont Castings wood stove. So sometimes it gets a little warm in there. And when I started these seeds, I put them near the stove so they popped quickly. And I actually have a small grow light thing that has LED bulbs in it. You don't have to have fancy bulbs, and LEDs are inexpensive. And they're right in front of a sliding glass door that gets the hot afternoon sun. And they are thriving. Those are the ones that I'm going to try this fish emulsion on, because they're ready for a little fertilizer right now. Now, in that same general area, I have a beautiful bay window over my kitchen sink, and that gets strong sun during the day. So okay, that's a place that you could grow some of these things. Not long term, okay, but for short term and getting them started would be fine.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering about that because I was able to grow basil really well last year, but I have an unobstructed northeast facing window, and I wasn't sure if that's like a
right. Now, as long as you've got really good sun, you always have to watch your watering.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thank you. All right. Next question. We've had a few questions come in about rosemary. So I'll I'll ask about the issue with it overwintering. this person says, I've never been able to get rosemary to survive the winter indoors. Is there not enough sunlight to overwinter these plants? Do you really need to start over every year?
Rosemary and lavender are a little more demanding than your average herb.
Mhm.
And they're not terribly fond of inside growing. I have grown them successfully for fairly, a couple of months, 2 or 3 months in this bright window over my sink. Number one, it's pretty humid there, and there's a lot of sun, but they're not really happy inside most of the time. And as far as outside is concerned, if you're growing lavender, it has to have precise drainage. And what people don't realize is that drainage isn't always as good in the wintertime. So always be aware of how your soil is draining and check it in the wintertime. As far as rosemary is concerned, I've had some grow over winter for years and then some that didn't make it. Okay. So far, so good this year. We had some really cold weather in December, and other than that, it's been a very mild winter. But the hardiest of these varieties is rosemary ARP, ARP. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, we actually had a question about that. ARP, rosemary. Does it need any winter protection? Usually this person, Mary Jo, said she's lost it the last 2 winters. So
yes. And drainage is part of it. It needs to drain well. Mine, I have one in the garden and one in a container. They don't look the happiest right now, but they're all alive. And I'm going to prune it back a bit, not severely. And they're going to be fine. They're going to come back because I'm going to give them some of this beautiful plantain and fish fertilizer. Okay.
Okay. Do you have any recommendations of herbs or flowering herbs maybe, that would come back year after year? Maybe that tend to self-seed or that are perennial and would come back?
Well, thyme blooms and it's beautiful. There are a lot of people that do use this as a bit of a lawn substitute. I really don't think there are any lawn substitutes that would take the kind of foot traffic that my family would give it, thank God. But yes, well, your oregano blooms beautifully, your thyme blooms beautifully. A number of them bloom beautifully. They may have a period of bloom, but yes, they do bloom. Okay. And they are perennial.
Okay, neat. Okay, man, that makes me want to grow herbs to see the flowers. All right, we've actually had a few questions about this, and this is interesting. I'm just not creative enough to think about this, but do you have any recommendations of herbs that could be grown and used during their main growing season and then enjoyed in like a cut arrangement towards the end of their season once they start to flower?
Oh, yes.
Okay, I think you would have some because you do the most.
I'll tell you what, you might be surprised at one of the first answers is basil. But I love to grow Thai basil and some of the unusual basils and let them bloom because number one, they're very fragrant when you're touching them, but the blooms are beautiful too. And that can be your taller scape and whatever. And of course, we've got the violas and the pansies and the marigolds and the zinnias, which isn't technically an herb, I realize, but it's grown along with this. There's a lot of them that do bloom, okay?
Okay. All right, we're running out of time, but I'm going to ask one more question. This is from Cassandra. She says, do you have any suggestions for herbs? She is asking particularly for ground cover, but I'm going to expand it and ask about herbs that can be grown in part shade. They tried lavender and it didn't survive. So they're looking for part shade herbs, and she's looking specifically for ones for ground cover. But I know we probably have a lot of part shade, people trying to grow herbs in part shade. So I want to
try the thyme and the oreganos.
Okay.
The oreganos are really very hardy and they do spread with runners quickly. So does the thyme. So try those. Lavender is the last thing you want to try to do. Lavender wants to be hot soil, full sunshine. I grow it 6 to 8 hours and in very good drainage. So lavender is not your best bet for that. But you just can't make, and look, there's all this variegation. It's just gorgeous. Now, they need some sunshine too. But mine are growing, a lot of them, in part shade. But they do get some sunshine. They need at least 4 or 5 hours of sunshine. But look how pretty those are. And they spread. Wonderful ground cover. Yes, ma'am.
All right, I'm typing my email, everybody, into the chat box, and I'm going to send it out to everybody in just a minute because we have so many questions left. There's no way we're going to be able to get to all these. I'm sorry, we have to wrap it up. But I'm sending my email out right now. You can hit reply on your confirmation email. That does go to me. I actually think it goes to one of my other colleagues who helps me on Eventbrite. So there's several of us monitoring it. So you'll absolutely have a response to your email if you send that. But I just sent out my email directly. There's Peg, thank you. There's a ton of interest in this topic. Clearly, we still have 25 questions waiting. So again, everybody, I am sorry we don't have time, but thank you all so much for your interest. Please feel free to contact us. If you don't want to email me, you can call your closest store. Peg is at the Fair Oak store.
Yeah, and I'll be happy to help answer these questions.
Yeah. And we will send out the recording tomorrow. You can also go on our YouTube channel. It takes us about 24 hours to get those recordings up, but they're all available on our YouTube channel. Most of them are available on our YouTube channel, so you can access them there. And we will send out a coupon tomorrow as well. So that's it from me. Peg, do you have anything you want to wrap up with?
Just get out there and enjoy it, because this is probably one of the most healthy endeavors you'll ever get into.
Oh yeah, I love growing herbs. I just have, makes me so excited. All right. Well, thank you everybody, and happy gardening. I know everyone's excited that spring is here, and I think everybody's looking forward to getting their herb garden started too.
And it's wonderful to do that. Just bear in mind that April can be, when I speak of diversity in plants, you have the diversity in the weather. And the only thing you can do is keep an eye.
Yes, that's great. Thank you. All right, Peg. Well, thank you so much. Have a great day, and everybody else have a great day as well.